Hey, everybody, how are you? Happy Saturday. We got one more day until Sunday. That means the NFL is here. Fantasy football is going to be crazy. The TPFFKAL show is in full effect. Once again, this is Freddie Ewan, two-time GM of the Year, current Pantheon Cup champion, and your host of the TPFFKAL show. This is the show that you guys have all been waiting for. It's the Start Sit Show with my man, JWubs, the favorite this year. I'm going to get him on the line. We're going to go over players that we think are going to get good starts. We're going to go over players that we think are good sits. It's going to be a quick show, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to send him out to get him on the line, and we are going to be good to go. This is going to be a ton of fun. I'm excited. Let's get him on the line, and let me see if I can bring up kind of the players that I put together who are good starts and good sits. James.
How are you, sir?
Good. Welcome to the TPFFKAL show.
Thank you.
So this is going to be this is week one, start, sit. I'm excited.
How can you not be?
I mean, exactly. How can you not be? Week one is always very confusing, I would say.
Sure.
You don't know who you can't tell a whole lot from preseason. You don't know what the coaches are going to do, who the coaches are going to put in. I think that we can really just go kind of by like the matchups and who has good matchups, who has bad matchups. And a lot of that is almost also from last year too. I gave you a list. I'm going to go over these guys with you one by one.
Okay.
We're going to start with quarterbacks. This guy, did not play well last year. He had sat for almost a year and a half. New team, big contract. Would you start or sit Deshaun Watson this week?
Yeah, so I think Deshaun, points as a low-end QB1. The thing that we have to remember last year, and really in general, I think that the NFL's suspension policy is problematic. The entire rule of people not being allowed in the team facility, it has the effect of isolating guys who may already have problems. Some of these guys are, you think in the case of Calvin Ridley dealing with mental health issues. You think about, the guys who were caught gambling, understand not playing in the game, but I think, really you want to keep these guys in position to be set up for success down the road. We're too focused on the punitive aspect and not enough on the rehabilitation aspect. But, if we take this specifically with respect to Watson, he played in preseason last year. He got his reps, as much as they could, and then they had to get, Brissett up and ready. And then you're out of the facility for 10 weeks, 11 weeks. And it's very hard to come back in and catch up to all the things that have evolved over the course of the season, get your timing down with the wide receivers, so on and so forth. And I think with the full off season to practice, he's going to come in. He should be set up for success to do pretty well. Cincinnati has a tendency toward a lot of shootouts. The over-under for this game is middle of the road, and so I think that puts Watson in as a low-end QB1.
I agree with most of you there. I think Watson has, everything that you said. He's got a full training camp under his belt. He's the guy was great back in Houston. I don't know that it's like I could see that game either going 24-20 or like 17-20 or something like that, and him having 40 yards rushing and maybe 2 touchdowns and maybe a pick. So I agree with you. He's kind of like on the low end a little bit. What about Mac Jones?
Oh, I think there are certain people that are probably just a full avoid, and I think Mac Jones for me is on that list. I don't know that I would have drafted him as a starter in a 2 QB league. I certainly wouldn't be playing him in any particular week.
I think he's on his way out now. This guy, the next guy is, this guy is, he's like a top five, top six quarterback this year. He's got a tough matchup. I believe this is in Green Bay. Nope, he's at home actually, but he's at home against the Packers. What do you think of Justin Fields this week? The offensive line's destroyed.
It certainly is, but I think that we're going to see that the Bears' run game in general is stronger this year. I think Herbert is set up to be a very strong RB1. Roshan Johnson did really well at Texas in pass pro, so I think we'll see him a lot on third down for that pass protection. There seems to have been some chemistry going on with DJ Moore and Fields this year. I still don't have confidence in Fields as a passer. He wants to go for 4,000 this year. He did 2,200 last year. I think he improves on that, but not enough to really be viewed as somebody who became this year's Jalen Hurts. But having said all that, he has shown remarkable plus ability to create with his feet, and I think he ends up being a mid-range RB1 this week. QB1. Sorry.
I think Fields is you can come either way. I agree with you. I don't think Fields has that, the passing down. I think that Moore is going to help him a lot. The offensive line is trash. They don't have that much of a running game. I think that in leagues like the champion leagues where you're getting 4 points per a touchdown pass and you're getting 6 points for a touchdown run from the quarterbacks, I think he's kind of better suited for those kind of leagues where, you're getting 6 points for a touchdown pass. I think There's a lot of other guys that you can kind of find in. And that really brings us to this other guy. And this guy is a big, he's a big star. We have no idea what he's going to do this year is the rookie Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis going up against Jacksonville this week. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, I like Jacksonville's defense. I think that the game does, potentially point to a situation where they're going to have to be able to pass in order to keep up, because I think Jacksonville's offense is greatly improved. So it's going to come down in certain respects to whether or not Anthony Richardson can throw. And if you ever saw a game of his at Florida, you know that the answer to that is not yet. Right. He will certainly create with his feet. Zach Moss is doubtful for the game. I think that works in his favor. I don't think Deion Jackson will be particularly effective. I think he's probably more of a low end QB2 for this week, Richardson. And I'd be giving him a few weeks for them to work out the kinks and figure out how to use him effectively, given where he's at right now.
It's funny. Richardson is a popular choice on DraftKings this week. And, I can see this guy, I can see Jacksonville going in and putting up a lot of points and Richardson being forced to throw the ball a lot. And I can literally see this guy, having, maybe 50, 60 rushing yards and 4 picks, something like that. I think they're throwing them to the wolves kind of. They're doing that with a lot of rookie quarterbacks. It's not really the same as like if you're picked in the first 5 picks, you're almost a starting quarterback immediately. You don't see that too often anymore. And I think sometimes that, if you sit down a year, like look at Patrick Mahomes, he sat behind for a year, and I think that really helped him. I think Richardson's in for a long year. I think he's going to have there's going to be some highlights, but I think he's in for a really long year.
Agreed.
And the last guy on the quarterbacks, this is going to be an interesting one as well, is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. And, look, Buffalo's defense is overrated. That would work in Rodgers' favor, but it comes down ultimately to whether or not you believe that the fall off in performance that Rodgers had last year was because Green Bay's wide receiver room was gutted and then reloaded with rookies, or if it's because he's in his late 30s and is still starting to fall off. I happen to err more toward that latter group. And for me, I think Garrett Wilson will certainly make his contributions. I do think that we will see some double teams with safety help from the Bills that has the potential to somewhat limit Wilson, but I do think he'll still be maybe a low wide receiver one. But one of the issues with Rodgers is that he tries to be a little mini offensive GM, and he brought his retread projects of Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard with him, and I just don't think that those guys have the effectiveness that the Jets could have had, had they maybe kept Elijah Moore, who they just really blew that relationship last year. So I think Aaron Rodgers would be a strong sit for me. And I'm not really understanding how he's been drafted as much as he has.
I see, I mean, just looking at this game, the over under is kind of in the middle. It's 45.5. Buffalo's a slight favorite. It's in New York. Rodgers is, he's with a new team. I think Wilson's going to do a lot of great things, but, I can agree with you there. It's just kind of like, we all know that Aaron Rodgers is on the tail end of his career. He's not going to win any more MVPs. And he almost seems like Brett Favre 2.0. I know Favre had some good games when he was on the Jets, but I could see Rodgers having a couple of good games. But I agree with you. I don't know why he's been drafted so high. I think it's probably just going to be like he's going to be a middle of the road. There's guys like Kirk Cousins, Danny Dimes that I would all take over him very easily.
Yeah.
And he's some guy that I wouldn't start. Getting to the running backs, I got some interesting running backs for you, James. The first one is Cam Akers.
Yeah. Yeah, Seattle's got a bottom half quality defense. I think that their offense is being underrated coming into this year, but especially with Cooper Kupp out, I think you're going to see that the Rams are going to be playing catch up mode in a lot of the game. Unfortunately, Tyler Higbee is almost their wide receiver one for all intents and purposes this week, unless someone's actually a believer in Van Jefferson or Puka Nacua. So, I think Stafford's going to struggle, for this first part of the season. And, I know that there's a lot of folks who say, look, Akers only got hot the last 4 or 5 games last year. Well, Achilles injuries take 2 years to come back from, and there's plenty of examples of guys really hitting their stride in year 2. I think that Akers started to show that toward the tail end of last year, and I think that he's going to, be able to deliver that even with a subpar offensive line. And so I would say he probably points to RB2 territory and would be a start for me.
I like Akers a lot too. And I mean, a lot of things you said there was, I'm just looking at this line really quick. The line's 40-6, Seattle's favored by 5. The Rams are probably going to be passing a lot, but who are they going to pass the ball to? So, I think that Akers is probably going to get a lot. He should be able to get some catches out of the backfield. And you're right. He looked great last year. Towards the end of the season, he was over that injury and he was really playing well. I would start Akers, season long. Is Akers going to hold up fully? I think he's kind of at the tail end, but he does have an opportunity. It just seems that, if they had Cooper Kupp too, Akers would be playing much better, and Stafford would be playing better. I mean, Kupp is, such the cog in that offense. When he's on the field, everyone plays better. So that's the one thing that, you got to look at. On the other side, this is going to be really interesting too. I've been talking about this, all preseason long. And, what do you do with Zach Charbonnet this weekend?
Well, I think it's devastating for Zach Charbonnet that Kenneth Walker, made it off of the injury list yesterday. And, barring that, Charbonnet's been getting a lot of work with the ones. He seems to have been making the most of that. I think over the course of the season, he's going to pick up value. But I think for this game, he's probably going to be more limited toward third downs. and I'm not really expecting him to do well. I probably wouldn't even consider him for a flex option for this week, so I would be sitting him.
Yeah, I'm staying away from just, any Walker and Charbonnet right now until you really see what they're intending to do there. And who knows? I think Charbonnet's a great, I think Charbonnet's a great back. Walker's had some injuries, and I think Charbonnet has a really good chance to, take
Yep.
over Walker. But Walker's a young guy too, so it's going to be interesting. And only Pete Carroll really knows that answer right now.
Yeah, I'm thinking that Walker will be used kind of like Penny was last season. They'll ride him strong until that injury comes, and then they'll just switch over to Charbonnet. So I think I would start Walker as an RB2 this week, but Charbonnet would stay on my bench.
This is the Colts are a mess in the running back spot. Taylor's out for 4 games. There's three guys. There's Hull, Jackson, and who's the other guy? You just named him before.
Jack Moss.
Zach Moss.
Yeah.
So everyone's Zach Moss looks like, I don't know if he's going to play or he's not going to play, but there's it seems like a lot of people are leaning towards Jackson. I don't like any of the Colts halfbacks. Would you put this guy in?
So Zach Moss right now is listed as doubtful. In my memory, if a guy's listed as doubtful, it's 99% he's not going to be playing. As long as Zach Moss isn't in the game, I think that Deion Jackson becomes a flex option. But that's really going to be a one-game thing, because as soon as Moss is back, he will be the starter until such time as Taylor is back, or the Colts deal Taylor for another starting running back. So long term, I think Moss is the play. Jackson only goes in if Moss is out. Otherwise, if Moss is back this week, I think it's a full avoid.
Sure.
Entire backfield.
And I think Richardson's going to take a lot of those rushes away too. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of QB design rushes in that game.
Yeah.
Next guy, this is another interesting one, and this is something that I'm trying to stay away from is, the Jets backfield, Dalvin Cook. What do you do with Dalvin Cook this week?
Sure. So, what we have to remember here is that we're, 11 months out from Breece Hall tearing his ACL. As those injuries go, it was as clean as it gets. But I think that, the Jets believe they have a shot to make the playoffs this year. But to do that, I think they also believe they need a healthy Breece Hall. And I think what we'll see is that the Jets will lean more heavily toward Dalvin Cook for the first part of the season. Maybe a 60-40 split. And then by the end of the season, I think perhaps that will start to flip in the other direction. For this week, though, Dalvin Cook is a flex play for me, and I would have him in.
I would probably, I can see, I don't even know what they're going to do with Breece Hall for the first couple of weeks either. So I can see Cook getting the majority of those touches probably. Yeah. And Hall maybe just, I think they have the flexibility now to kind of just ease them back in. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't think he would be a bad start. This other guy, so this guy I think is, I think, with Jaylen Warren, this guy's on the hot seat. He was great his rookie year. He was not very good at all last year. You drafted him in the TPFFKL. Going up against a tough defense, a tough 49ers defense. They're at home. There's a very low over under 41.5. San Francisco's a slight favorite. What do you think Najee does this weekend?
Yeah, so and I know that this was the one pick I made that you were somewhat critical of in your post draft review. What people forget is that in the first preseason game last year, Najee ended up with a Liz Frank injury, and the reality is that for the first 8-9 weeks of the season, he was playing with a steel plate in his shoe, and that's uncomfortable at best. Just thinking about the sort of flexion that you have to be able to make an NFL level cut. And what people saw at the end of last year is that Najee's efficiency got back, his burst got back, And a lot of analysts this offseason have just focused on, well, Jaylen Warren was more efficient last year. And they don't take a look at the most basic piece of information that, Najee was hurt. What people forget is that, going into last year's preseason, Najee was considered to be a low level first round pick overall, right? And people didn't adjust him.
Absolutely.
He got the Liz Frank injury, but you know, go back and think about Derrick Henry in last year's draft. He had the Liz Frank injury back in 2021. Derrick Henry came out and crushed it last year. And Najee is not maybe quite on the level of Derrick Henry, but I think he's a low level RB1. And I think that the Steelers have been quite clear that he's their guy. You have to remember that there is, first round draft capital wrapped up in Najee. Jaylen Warren was a fifth round guy who wasn't particularly effective in college. I think the success that Jaylen Warren has had is more a reflection of the Steelers' offensive system. And when you consider the improvements that the Steelers have made to their offensive line this offseason, I think that Najee Harris has a potential to be a borderline top 5 running back this season. Absolutely respect San Francisco's defense, but I have Najee as a low-level RB1 for this week.
Damn, that's a lot of confidence. I think I agree with most of what you say. I do think that's something that helps Najee a little bit too. Is that his first year as a rookie, and although he was terrible, Ben Roethlisberger was still 2-time Super Bowl winner in the league for 15 years. That offense ran a lot smoother, even though the offense was not that great. It ran a lot smoother, and Harris was definitely the focal point of the offense. But when you're starting a rookie quarterback like Kenny Pickett, and I think I don't even think he started the season. I think they started someone else. But I know that has to have something to do with the offense too. I know that has to have a big effect to do with the offense.
They started with Mitchell Trubisky last year, and I don't think I even need to explain why that's problematic. When Pickett got in, it definitely took him a few games to get going. He struggled with passing over the middle throughout the season. It's something that he's worked on heavily this offseason, even cut his honeymoon short to get back to, continue preparing for the year. I think you're going to see Pickett take a really material step forward this year. And I think that Pickens will have improved his route tree as well. And just that improvement to the passing offense is going to open up running lanes that also did not exist for Steelers backfield last year.
I agree. That's all good stuff. I mean, that's all good stuff. That's going to make Joe Moo and Bowser really happy. Going to the wide receivers here. I love this guy. I think this guy is going to be, I think this guy's going to be, I think tomorrow he's going to have a big day. And, they play an easy team in the Cardinals. I think this guy's going to eventually be the number 1 wide receiver. I think McLaurin is done. What do you think about Dotson for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that Dotson points to a low-level wide receiver 2, or possibly a high flex. He's a start for me. The trouble in terms of what we're seeing in the preseason is that Howell has a tendency to lock in on one wide receiver at a time. And what people forget is that before he started doing that with Dotson, he was locked in on McLaurin until McLaurin got the turf toe. McLaurin's now off of the injury list. It's going to be starting. Certainly it's against Arizona's absolute worst defense in the NFL. And so I expect Washington to do quite well. I think that means that a lot of players will outperform on Washington's team. And I do think that will include Dotson, but maybe not to the level that, some of the folks who drafted him are hoping.
The over-under is only 38 on this game. Washington's favored by 7, but I can see, there's a lot of good talk about Howell this year, especially for tomorrow. I know there's a lot of these DraftKings experts that are, telling to put Howell in. He's got a really low price on DraftKings. I think he's going to, I think Howell's going to play good tomorrow. I think Dotson's going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, so you've mentioned quarterbacks on DraftKings a lot. I think if people are looking for a good uh, value play at quarterback, I think it's probably pointing more toward Russell Wilson than either of the guys that you've mentioned as being popular choices in that price range.
I don't think Wilson's a bad. I don't think Wilson's a bad choice either. So this guy's going to be interesting. It's like, and I wasn't paying too much attention to this, and I probably should have tried to draft him if I could have, but Thielen is gone. He's in Carolina. Justin Jefferson is obviously the workhorse, and he's going to get a ton of passes, but he's also going to get a ton of attention. I think tomorrow, Jordan Addison, I think there's going to be a lot of scoring in that game between the Vikings and Buccaneers. It's got a 46
Sure.
Minnesota over, and it's like Addison's going to probably get more opportunities than any rookie wide receiver, I would think. What do you think about Addison tomorrow?
I think that your take is right for the year, but KJ Osborne has actually been the guy who's been resting with the starters and getting the starter snaps. And I think that KJ Osborne would be the sneaky sleeper for tomorrow's game. I think Addison's really going to be functioning more as the third receiver while he continues to, lock in on the playbook and whatnot. And I don't think I'd really be starting any of the rookie wide receivers for this week. Addison will, over the course of the season, absolutely have a better opportunity than maybe anybody outside of Quentin Johnston. Although Quentin Johnston, his opportunity is really dependent on the guys in front of him getting hurt. I think Addison's got the more direct path, but I'd be leaving him on my bench, and if I really needed to get somebody who could be available on the waiver wire and have some potential to really break through in week one to put up some points, I would be going KJ Osborne.
KJ Osborne, that's a good. I mean, he's been on that team for a while, and he's been pretty underrated too. I mean, he's had some good games and some good catches. It seems like, I mean, that's JJ. He's the consensus number one pick. He really kind of overshadows all those other receivers. Especially last year. But Thielen wasn't that bad last year, and I that's actually a good idea. I mean, that's very smart. I think KJ Osborne might be a sneaky pick. It's like the one thing you got to ask for is how much of the target share is Jefferson going to get, and Hawkinson, which is probably a boatload. So it's like, I don't know if either of those guys would get too many. I don't think there's a whole lot of targets left for either one of those guys almost.
I'm actually going to predict that Osborne gets more targets than Hawkinson, and that you're going to see some complacency out of Hawkinson now that he's gotten his contract. Really, his entire last season came down to two games: one with Detroit, one with Minnesota. And with Minnesota, that was with an aging, much less efficient Thielen. I think that now that Minnesota's focused on guys like Osborne and Addison as their wide receivers 2 and 3. I think that target share will be coming down a little bit, and I think Osborne's going to do very well, and Hawkinson's certainly a week in week out starter, but I think he was probably a little bit overdrafted.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've never been big on Hawkinson. Just for some reason, I've never been big on him. If you had to start a Ravens receiver, who's the Ravens receiver that you're starting this week? I think they're just going to run the ball 100 times.
Well, unfortunately, that was really the Greg Roman offensive scheme with the new offensive coordinator coming in from Georgia. He is very much a pass first, pass second, pass last sort of guy, and I think that really adds a lot of uncertainty to how Baltimore's offense is really going to run this year. It creates a lot of uncertainty for Dobbins. Now that Lamar's got his big contract, he may be somewhat less motivated to run. Um, for me, Beckham's, already dealing with another injury again. He's a sit for me. Rashad Bateman has spent most of his career hurt. He's a sit for me. If I have to start somebody, I'm starting Zay Flowers, but I am holding my nose as I do it.
Yeah, I would think that, it's like, I was Beckman's got a lot of experience, but like, he's old and beat up, and that's probably I don't see any one of these guys even being a value start, a
Yeah.
value start. It's going to
It's
be,
it's it's really stunning to me that they would have gone out and signed OBJ for 15 million a year when they could have probably, traded a seventh round pick and a dozen donuts to Arizona and
Hopkins.
taken Hopkins
Yeah.
for 11. It's baffling why they would do that.
I feel bad for this next guy, because I do really like Jordan Love. And I think Jordan Love is going to be a good quarterback in the league. It seems like ever since Adams left the Packers, it's been a shit show at wide receiver. Watson's out tomorrow. Um, Jordan Love has no one to throw to almost. If you're going to start anyone on the Packers receiver core, who is it?
Well, it ultimately is going to come down to Romeo Doubs and his hamstring. If Romeo plays, though, I actually believe that Romeo Doubs, not Christian Watson, is the man who will be the wide receiver one on the Packers this year. Um, the 4 weeks that made Christian Watson's season last year, Doubs was injured for all of them. And then as soon as Doubs came back, Watson came back down to earth. Um, Jordan Love has had a really strong connection with Doubs in training camp and preseason. When Doubs and Watson were on the field last year, Doubs outscored Watson 7 out of 9 games. I think Doubs is the guy. Jaden Reed may end up doing fairly well also tomorrow. Another rookie who may get to break through because of an injury in front of him.
Michigan State,
But
Michigan State guy too, right?
which makes it just disgusting that I'm even saying his name. But I think for tomorrow, if Doubs plays, he's the guy. If Doubs does not play, then I think the entire wide receiver room is a straight avoid.
Yeah, I think that, same thing. I think Reed is probably going to get an opportunity, and he might get an opportunity really quickly.
Yeah.
And just, going to that game, I can see Aaron Jones getting a lot of, just a lot of time with that, a lot of capital. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And then, last in the wide receivers, and then we'll get to the tight end really quick. DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, so I think Hopkins will do well tomorrow. The Tennessee offensive line is Swiss cheese, and that's certainly going to create a lot of situations where Tannehill's going to have to throw quickly. That was something that we saw as soon as Hopkins got back from suspension last year. That was his bread and butter. That quick release sort of route. Keep the chains moving, and I think we're going to see Hopkins do well. I think he points to a wide receiver too for tomorrow.
I think Hopkins is probably going to be a good start. Trey Burks is humbling a little bit. I really like Traylon Burks if he can stay healthy, but it looks like he's just going to be another guy that's not going to be able to stay healthy. Tannehill's got to start. Tannehill's got to play good, because he's got 2 guys behind him almost that he's on the hot seat. And you're right. Their offensive line is beat up. I'm an Eagles fan. I know how bad Andre Dillard is, and they signed him as the left tackle. So it's like, watch your blind side there, dude.
Yeah.
So we talked about the Ravens receivers. If Lamar's going to throw to anyone, who's it going to be to? Mark Andrews.
Yeah, so Andrews is on the injured list. I want to say it's a quad injury. I think he's going to be a game time decision tomorrow. If Andrews plays, I think he's probably the number one tight end for the week. If not, I'd be making sure that I had Isaiah Likely. One of the things that is really lost in Greg Roman's offensive design was that they focus very heavily on passes across the middle, specifically because Lamar's accuracy to the sidelines is terrible. And in this new offensive scheme, I think the wide receivers are going to struggle for exactly that reason. I think Andrews is going to continue to eat for that reason. Uh, but Isaiah Likely's shown enough that even if Andrews is out, he's going to do well in filling that role, and I think he becomes a must start.
Yeah, Likely's a good back. Likely's a good backup. Very good backup. All right. So the last question I'm going to ask you: you got two tight ends on your team. Their names are George Kittle and Kyle Pitts. Which one are you going to start?
Well, again, I think that's going to come down to an injury question. So, Kittle's got a hamstring that's acting up. If he plays, certainly the Steelers' defense is going to be much improved with Watt back, and I think that we're going to see Purdy being put into a lot of situations where he has to find quick releases. He certainly was leaning on Kittle last year. That is a very common pattern for rookie quarterbacks. Even coming into his second year, he's got 6-7 games of experience at this stage. I think Kittle will do outstanding. Pitts is a guy who, if you have him, he's probably your tight end one. Your current example notwithstanding. I just don't think we know enough about Desmond Ridder. The entire situation for that passing offense makes me really nervous. And, I would rather not start Pitts if I didn't have to. But if I had Pitts on my team, it would be that, I'm riding with him as my tight end one and hoping for the best.
Yeah, and they got a ton of weapons. They got a ton of weapons on that team now, but really no quarterback. So it's going to be, it's going to be interesting. James, great job, man. This is, I mean, you made me feel like one of your daycare kids because you know so much more about the NFL than I do sometimes. And I think I know my NFL, but I mean, you did fantastic. That was a great job. Our first week for start and sit. Let's keep it going, brother.
All right, sir. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, guys. That was our first start and sit, the TPFFKL show. Everyone have a great Saturday.
All right. See you later.